Welcome to TM Radio Broadcasting. My name is Frank Allen. We are live from Boston, Massachusetts. Today's date, Friday, February the 21st, 2025. To listen to the broadcast, dial +1 518 801 1318. When we are off air, you can listen on this line to past episodes 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You can also listen on YouTube. Our designation is at Targeted Massachusetts. 2 words. You can call into the studio and ask my guest or myself a question. The number is +1 617 987 8603. Tonight, I have the great pleasure of presenting Dr. Linda Pimenta, a TI herself, and available to the community. Okay, we have somebody who has just called in. Linda, if you'd like to hold for a second.
Sure.
She probably has a question for you. Hi, Lauren.
Hey,
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good, and yourself?
Oh, very good. Dr. Linda Pimenta is here. Do you have a question for her?
No, well, not for now, but I'm just glad to hear that she's on your call. Hi, doctor.
Hi, good evening.
How are you?
I'm very well. I'm cold. It's cold in this country right now.
You must be in the Carolinas. We just got all of this snow, but it's already done melted, so I'm a little bit happy with that.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm in North Carolina, so they were talking about this big snowstorm we were going to have. And the snow was beautiful coming down, and I declare I thought about 5 inches was going to fall behind what we already had. But the next morning, the sun was out.
Well, that's good.
I mean, they blasted it on TV like it was just going to be so bad. But it wasn't. So anyway, it was pretty to look at.
Okay, Lauren, thank you very much for calling in. If you think of a question,
you're welcome, friend.
If you think of a question, please feel free to pick up the phone and call in once again. If you'd like to listen, you can dial 518-801-1318. And that's a direct line to our listeners. Listener line, pardon me.
All right. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And thank you for all you do for the community as well. Thank you.
Okay, so Frank, I'm going to ask that I have 25 slides prepared just to kind of keep me on track. So I'm going to respectfully ask if people could wait for questions until I get through it, because I might answer their questions with my presentation. And then, we'll have plenty of time for questions after.
Okay, that sounds very good. Thank you.
All right, you ready for me to start?
Yes, you can go right ahead. Right now. I'm going to mute myself. Go ahead.
Okay. So the presentation I was asked to do was a psychology of targeting, but I really feel it's important to give some information about targeting before I get into the psychology of it. So according to Collins English Dictionary, the definition of targeting, it's both a noun and a verb. So in the military, it's the act of deciding to attack a particular point, area, or person physically, like the targeting of innocent civilians in reprisal for terrorist attack is as evil. Another definition, the act of attempting to appeal to a person or a group to influence them in some way, and the art of directing or aiming something at a particular group of people. And as a verb, it would be to select as an object of attention or attack, to aim or direct something. So synonyms of targeting, and this is from Merriam-Webster's dictionary. And I found this interesting when I looked this up. Baiting, harrying, mimicking, belittling, mocking, taunting, pestering, hassling, heckling, scorning, sneering at, putting down, tormenting, bugging, teasing, ragging, bad-mouthing, and ridiculing. So those are all synonyms of the word targeting. So the program that we know of here currently, I want to talk about how it all originated as far as I know. And it originated in Germany during Nazi times. And the German word for targeting, for gang stalking is Zersetzung, Zersetzung. And it was difficult to find a lot of references. So I'm going to be honest up front and tell you that I got a lot of this information from Wikipedia. However, I did click on many of the references, and there are several, to make sure that they were legitimate references. And the ones that I clicked on were legitimate. And there is a couple of places here that they were still looking for confirmation on things. So I'll let you know about that. But this is on Wikipedia, so you can look it up if I'm going too fast. Okay, so it was a Stasi, which is the secret police psychological warfare technique from Nazi Germany, and it was a crime of undermining the war effort. In English, what this translates into is decomposition or disruption. It's psychological warfare. The Stasi, or the secret police, used it to repress political opponents in East Germany during the 1970s and 1980s. And it was all covert. There were secret methods of abuse, control, and psychological manipulation. And they were targeting preemptively in order to prevent the civilians from political dissent. So they hadn't even done anything, but they were doing it to prevent it. They really wanted to break down, undermine, and paralyze people behind a facade of social normality in a form of silent repression. They used operational psychology and its extensive network. They had 170,000 to 500,000 informal collaborators, and some of them were kids as young as 14 years old. So these are the kids that we would say were gang stalkers. All right. And they did this to launch personalized psychological attacks against the targets, to damage their mental health, and to lower their chances of a hostile action against the state. They anticipated there was around 10,000 victims. This is one of the facts that was not clarified. They're still looking for clarification on the actual numbers. And they think about 5,000 of them had irreversible damage. Again, keep in mind, this is not actual. They're thinking that this is what it was. And they also, about 5,000 received special pensions for restitution. So we do know that that is factual. And the goal of I have a hard time pronouncing this, Zersetzung, is fragmentation, paralysis, disorganization, and isolation of the hostile and negative activities so that they can restrict or totally prevent any activities. And if applicable, they would prepare the ground for a political and ideological reestablishment. So in other words, they were using this so that they can get people to comply with their new order. And it had to be executed in a uniformed, supervised manner. So they were very strict on how this was going to be carried out. The results were documented, and again, this was very secret because it's criminal. It's a crime. Even in Germany, it was a crime. All right, so they wanted to subvert and undermine the opponent, disrupt the target's private and family life. This way, they were unable to be hostile or negative because they were so preoccupied with what was happening to them. And as I said, they used collaborators to get details on the victim's life, and they used it against them. And some of the details that they would get would be things that some people might find embarrassing, whether it was your sexual preference, alcoholism, dependencies, things like that. So they used this strategy to desegregate the target personal circumstances. So what they wanted to ruin their career, their relationships with their spouse, their reputation in the community, and they wanted to alienate them from their children. What they wanted to do is they wanted to just make this person's life absolutely miserable, and everything that they had that was good for them to be removed. So they acted like they were the unseen gods, manipulating the destinies of these victims. And the victims were typically not believed if they talked about it. I don't know if this sounds familiar to any of you. Okay, so they use psychological oppression and persecution to undermine the self-confidence and self-esteem of the victim. It was meant to intimidate and to destabilize them by repeat disappointments and to socially isolate them. And some of the stuff I talked about, but they interfered with and disrupted their relationships, with like social undermining. They induced personal crises with victims. And they did this so that they didn't have time to do activism against the state. They used surveillance of religious, so these are the people that they started doing the surveillance to, religious communities, cultural and media establishments, and alternative political parties. So if you disagreed with what they believed in, you were going to be targeted. They also, professionals and students were expelled from associations and sports clubs, education and health services. And it, like I said, it covered every aspect of that person's civic life. They were false arrests by police. They were refused permits to travel to socialist states or to go to other areas if they wanted to leave the country and go to, say, Poland. And the Stasi collaborated with secret services of other countries. So if you left the country, they collaborated with that country so that the harassment continued. So it was used against individuals rather than incarcerate them all and charge them and put them through the court system where there'd be documentation and a paper trail and accountability at some point. So rather than incarcerate some of these individuals, they targeted them and they used attempts to entrap them. They might set up a man with minors, hoping that they could pursue criminal charges against them if they do anything. They could entrap them with drug possession, sex trafficking, theft, financial fraud, and rape. And again, the goal is to secretly destroy the self-confidence by damaging their reputation, organizing failures in their work, and destroying personal relationships. So Directive 171 /76 gives you different forms of Zersetzung. I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Again, it's spelled Zersetzung. Frank, can you pronounce that better than I did?
I believe it's Zersetzung.
Yes, Zersetzung. I'm just going to call it Z.
Okay, you call it Z. That's fine.
Okay, just for the rest of this, so I want to try to stay on time because I know we have a commercial break in around 8. Okay, so they did systematic degradation of the person's reputation, their image and prestige on a basis of true, verifiable, and discredited information, along with untrue, credible, irrefutable, and thus also discrediting information. So they took some information and they twisted it and with untrue things, or maybe there was something that was true and they just shared it with everybody. Like I said, someone's sexual preference, if they were an alcoholic, if they were going through a difficult divorce. So they just would go and use that against them. They use systematic engineering of social and professional failures to undermine their self-confidence, thus creating doubts regarding future prospects and engineering mistrust and mutual suspicion within groups, interrupting or impeding mutual relationships within a group in a space at a time. So they would actually infiltrate the group and have them turn on each other. Okay, psychological attacks. They did gaslighting, smear campaigns, including sending small falsified photos or documents to families or to their social circle. They used wiretapping. They damaged property, sabotaged cars. They purposely made them get incorrect medical treatment. Psychological subversion, psychological warfare, bugging. They used X-ray devices as directed to weaponize them in a manner to cause long-term health problems with exposure to radiation from the X-rays. They manipulated relations by anonymous letters, telephone calls, compromising photos that were altered, and they wanted to provoke conflict and as far as extramarital relations by actually using Romeo agents in an attempt to seduce the victim so that they could just go and share that with their spouse. So who else used these similar techniques? So that was Germany, that was East Germany, Nazi. Russia, under Vladimir Putin, used it on foreign diplomats and journalists in Russia. The United States used it in COINTELPRO. Counterintelligence. So COINTELPRO stands for Counterintelligence Program, and it's a covert and illegal program that took place between 1956 and 1971, although I don't believe it ever actually stopped. The FBI was surveilling, infiltrating, discrediting, and disrupting American political organizations that the FBI perceived to be subversive. So again, the years that it's documented is 1956 to 1971. So some of the people that they targeted were feminist organizations, the Communist Party of USA, anti-Vietnam War organizers, activists in civil rights and Black Power movements such as Martin Luther King Jr. and the Black Panther Party, animal rights organizations, American Indian movement, Latino groups like Mexicans and Chicanos, United Farm Workers, the Ku Klux Klan, National States' Rights Party, the New Left, and there were many others that they targeted. I just listed some of them. So the COINTELPRO program was revealed It was secret until March 8th of 1971, but it was revealed when the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI, they actually broke into one of the field offices and they took documents that proved this and they turned it over to the media. The media originally was hesitant to put it out there, but they did end up putting it out there. They worked with law enforcement, and it was very military-like. Law enforcement was very military-like at that time. They did illegal surveillance like wiretaps, microphone bugs, opening mails, and breaking into somebody's home. And there is activity documented as recent as 2020, although the FBI continues to deny everything. All right, so I know I went really quick through all of that. I wanted to give you some background before we get into the psychology of targeting. So what we did is I defined targeting by the dictionary. We looked at some of the synonyms of targeting. We reviewed Z, and we reviewed similar programs that were done in Russia and the United States. So that's just some background.
That's very good, Linda. We had a guest on some years ago from Canada. His first name was George. I cannot think of his last name, but he was a victim of Zersetzung as well. And that's what he called it. And he was driven out of his mind through physical activity. Things removed from his car, things added to his car, all kinds of things. I probably still have the episode. It may not be online, I'm not sure, but it was very, very interesting and terrible at the same time.
It is terrible. It's evil.
Yes, he lost his job, his career. He lost just about everything to Zersetzung. And Zersetzung seems to be leaning much toward the physical than the mental.
Yeah. Although, I mean, they did actually try to create some psychoses. And I know in the United States, in some of their programs, they absolutely did. They gave hallucinogenics and things like that. So substances can induce a psychosis that takes a very long time to clear. So they would intentionally do this to somebody. So Frank, it's 7:54. Did you want to just talk and then you can break for your commercial and then I'll go on with the rest of my slides?
Sure. That sounds great. Yeah, I would like to say that Zersetzung from Germany, they went through a lot of the Stasi files in East Germany, but many were destroyed. But we had this Project Paperclip as well, which brought many nasty people over here, some of which went directly right to NASA. So it's amazing that the targets, including the two of us, have actually gotten as far as we have, simply because it is the most egregious crime I have ever witnessed, heard of. I cannot even describe some of the things that have been done to me. And I know that you have had many of these things done to you as well.
Yeah. And
someday we'll sit down and talk about it. But I'm very, very pleased with your presentation.
Thank you.
I think it's safe to say that we can go on to commercial, and we'll be right back. And this is for TI events, and they have become a mainstay in the community in seeking out and producing new people who have come to the community who have something to share. And she is a big help posting all of our shows, Targeted Justice's shows, everyone's shows, DJ Chris, everyone. Hi, DJ Chris. Okay, so we'll go to commercial.
Chris, I've been hosting events for targeted individuals, but no one ever comes.
You need TIevents.org. It's where TIs find all the events, conference calls, meetups, webinars.
How do I get listed?
Just go to TIevents.org. It's easy. TIevents.org, where the TI community connects. List your events today.
Okay, and we're back from commercial already. We have another commercial that we will be adding probably next week. But for right now, that's it. So you can continue with your slides.
Okay, so now it's going to get a little more interesting, I think, for the people listening in. Sometimes the history stuff is boring, and maybe it's new information, maybe it's not. So this is on the psychology of targeting. So with targeting, the goals are to destroy the person's civil life. And the targets are not like, I'm not going to say it right, Zersetzung, but they want to ensure that every aspect of the person's life is disrupted. They use harassment, community stalking, torture in many forms. I'm going to list a couple of them. V2K, direct energy weapons, electronic molestation and injury, chemicals, including gases, frequencies, mind control, and manipulating someone's bodily functions electronically. And they're able to bring on new perps by using a smear campaign with lies about the individual and payoffs. They pay, some of them get paid. So their aim is to have the victim involuntarily admitted to a psychiatric hospital, and we've heard about several of those, to cause the victim true mental health conditions. One of them I talked about just a few minutes ago was to have like a substance-induced psychoses, but anxiety, paranoia, things like that that they could actually have, and to cause physical illness or injuries. And some of the ways that they do that is surgeries that are not necessary, or having medical procedures that are not necessary. So, I mean, they've infiltrated pretty much every career, so that you never know who's being right with you and who's not. So it does sometimes cause the TI to be paranoid. So they want the person to lose everything that provides independence, like their job, their relationships, their friends. And in some, it makes them question their religion. They want to break the person. They want to drive them to suicide or complete dysfunction.
Hey, Linda, I have something I should really sneak in here right now. Your practice is available for TIs to write in to seek help. Now, we have an email address that I'm going to provide, and I had originally put in a phone number, but she wanted us to basically screen some people, because there are some undesirables out there who get a hold of a phone number and just go nuts with it. But her new address is psychiatricti@gmail.com. Now, PSYCHIATRIC, capital T, capital I, @gmail.com. Go ahead, Linda.
Thank you. And I just created that for this presentation. And I thought, that's going to be so much better because, it's a brand new email address. It's not going to get any junk mail. And, it'll be, and I'll communicate through that. All right. So why do these perps, why do they do this? Well, they do it for control, mind control, with the intent to use them for trafficking, for sex, take their money and items of value. Sometimes they, on some people, they would make them develop multiple personalities and have them commit crimes. And they'd be in like a trance and they'd have they wouldn't remember anything. And to disable society's ability to not follow their agenda. And they do this using fear and intimidation. So if they were going to go to the neighborhood and have everybody go up against this one person, and somebody might be reluctant to do it, then they would intimidate them and say, well, that's okay, we can also target you too. So how do you get into this program? Well, maybe somebody just didn't like the person, right? Maybe they're doing this because of research, to make money, for sadist satisfaction. And I believe there's a satanic component to this. There's definitely spiritual warfare. I think we're coming towards end of times, and some of the aspects of this program is consistent with some of the stuff that we've seen in Revelations, which is a book in the Bible for those who have.
I think it most definitely. I think it falls into the hands of many different people.
Yep.
What it amounts to. There's different factions out there. You mentioned the Ku Klux Klan. Mm-hmm. I imagine there's a version of this out there that they are using. There are so many different factions. And if they get a hold of this, they'll use it. And a lot of them use it because they can. Number one. Yes. Number two, they are not told that the governments have their operators use it for an hour or two at a time. They fail to say anything. Mm-hmm. So these operators is what I call them. I refuse to call them handlers. They go on for hours and hours. Days become weeks, become months, become years, and like so many gamblers, they become addicted and stays 24/7. There is not a day since 2011, October was the month, that I have not been spoken to or targeted in some way. I am always spoken to. But go ahead, Linda, and you're doing an excellent job, by the way.
Thank you. And you kind of segued into some of the stuff I'm going to be covering now, so that worked out perfect. Okay. So as far as looking at the psychology of these perps or the operators, it is not normal for a person to get pleasure from causing or seeing a living thing suffer or struggle. That's not normal. But yet these people do. So you question how a person can do this. I mean, how can they be so evil and mean? But yet there's no shortage of people who are jumping at the chance to do this. And which is surprising. And it makes me wonder if they actually know all of what they're doing. And I don't think they know all of it. Some of them do, but I don't think they all do. For some, there is financial gain. For others, it gives them an opportunity to finally fit in with the group. And for some, it's entertainment, or they get pleasure in hurting another person. And again, they get to control somebody, which makes them feel better, makes them feel in power. And they believe that they're above the law. And I'm going to come back to those two words later on. Most of these perps and operators are or a lot of them, I should say, are uneducated and either unemployed or underemployed. Perhaps they're disabled. And a lot of them are either unhappy or unsuccessful in life and don't have success in relationships with the opposite sex. And there seems to be more male perps than females. Okay, so knowing this and knowing that people like to think, as a protective thing, people like to think that everybody else is the way they are, right? So these people want to bring other people down to their level. You hear people talk about, oh yeah, this person's so negative. She's just trying to get everybody to be negative down to their level. Now, one of the things that might motivate them, it could be jealousy. They could be jealous of that other person. It could be mental illness. They may be mentally ill, depression, low self-esteem, narcissism, sociopathic, or borderline personalities. They could have the delusion that they're as good as the target or perhaps even better, but yet they're not getting credit for how good they are.
Linda?
Right? Yes?
This brings in the God complex.
Yep.
They are above everyone.
Yep.
I had to stick that in there. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. I'm going to be touching on that too. So I'm going to use two psychiatric terms, narcissistic and sociopaths. So let's talk about narcissism. They like to see how they can control another person. They can make them sneeze, make them wake up out of a good sleep, make them fall asleep in the middle of a sentence, make their, manipulate their bodily functions, make them burp, pass gas, have diarrhea, and some they make them incontinent, make them cry, and they get off on this. A narcissist gets off on this because there's that God complex there. They have control. They see themselves with the power of God over their victim. A narcissist will have an inflated sense of importance, and it is more common in men. Now, a narcissist has an excessive need for admiration, and they have disregard for other people's feelings. They have an inability, they can't handle criticism. So if you try to tell them something, they can't handle it. It's going to be a fight. And they have a sense of entitlement. Okay. So let's look at sociopathy, the term is actually, or the diagnosis is antisocial personality disorder. That would be the psychiatric disorder. So they would have a disregard for other people. And oftentimes this behavior will start young, like in childhood. And this would be the kid who would put a firecrack in the frog's mouth and light the firecrack just to see the frog blow up. And they do this as a child, maybe a teenager. They have a tendency to lie, break laws, act impulsively, and they lack regard for safety for both themselves and everybody else. They're hostile, aggressive, violent towards others, and they're irresponsible, or they fail to fulfill their financial obligations. So oftentimes they'll have stuff sent to collections because they just never dealt with it. And they have a failure to honor commitments. There's that lack of empathy. They can be actually emotionally detached or indifferent, but blaming others for everything that goes wrong in their life or anything that happens. An antisocial personality will have a weak conscience or moral compass. They're self-centered. They prioritize their own needs and their own desires above everybody else. This is a person that's going to manipulate you by using charm or other ways of manipulation to gain affection or to control other people. Now, both narcissism and antisocial personality, they do require evaluation by a clinician, a trained clinician who is able to get a good history and review the criteria in order to make a formal diagnosis. But I'm telling you from what I've seen and read, they're definitely narcissistic sociopaths. If they're a perp, a lot of them are. So that concludes my presentation. I did go really quick. I had hoped to make sure I was done before an hour so that we could have a question and answer session. So now, Frank, you can open it up for questions.
Okay, I was going to add something, but I've totally forgotten what it was. So some of these questions actually should have been asked in the early part of the show, but that's okay. You haven't been on our show since August 11th, 2023. What has changed in your life? How are you?
So I am good. I am a warrior, and I live my life knowing that God is protecting me and that God is with me. And that, to be honest with you, is my strength. And that's why I am functioning as high as I am. However, you know, my targeting has not let up at all. They've infiltrated every place I've done work. I work for myself, but it's difficult. You know, I'm not getting paid from some of the certain insurance companies. So when I call for help or if I call the company, I always get the same operator, no matter who I'm calling. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's been going on for years, the same person. And I believe she was also there at one of the hotels where I was targeted. And and what happened was I recently called. I was trying to do something with Medicare for billing purposes, and I heard the conversation. I don't think they knew the line was open, and they said, "No, this one is for you. You wanted to take it. This is Linda Pimenta." And I'm like, "Oh," so it confirmed what I thought. Okay.
Linda, can you get into your employment history? Now, you've had employers who would not embrace the concept of targeting or anything to do with it. And you basically laid it out on a professional basis.
Mhm.
You didn't really get into anything, and still they hassled you over it. Now,
Yeah.
if it wasn't for you being a professional, what would the average person get?
Well, I think the average person would lose their job or leave their job. I've left jobs. I've lost contracts because they infiltrated. But the average person probably wouldn't have a lot of the means that I have. I've been very fortunate because of my career that I have other things to fall back on. But another person would probably be homeless. Oftentimes you hear of them becoming homeless, not able to make any money, maybe dependent on friends and family. And you know, those bridges burn pretty quick.
Yes, they do. Can you give us a feel as to the overall condition, physically and mentally, if you can, of the TIs that have called you in the past 2 years? I know you have gotten referrals from us, and you have also gotten referrals from Targeted Justice, I believe.
Yeah.
What condition are these people in?
So I mean, I've talked to people anywhere from physicians to people who are home or maybe disabled. And a lot of the people that I've talked to, I think when they first get a chance to talk to me, their thoughts are disorganized, and they just go on and talk because they finally have somebody that it's safe to discuss this with. And so they just, once that faucet gets opened, they can't shut it off. And what I started to do is start to bring them in and say, okay, wait a minute, let's just stop for a minute and let me just get a couple of questions. I might clarify, and then just try to redirect them so that we can have a conversation that's going to be more therapeutic for the individual. I've had people who are in total fear. And one person from Missouri, I think, in a panic that they were going to be taken. And they were isolated from everybody. And she had very good relationships with her family and friends before, but she was totally isolated, and she feared that she was going to be removed, and she didn't know what they would do to her. And so she was really in a panic. I do see a lot of anxiety in people, which is normal. You kind of would expect that. Some paranoia, not as much paranoia, because it's justified. I've seen MRIs, X-rays. I've seen things with implants, and that you can't question. There's no question that they've got something implanted. And then, I've had highly educated people just, help me, help me, and it's hard because I can't help everybody. I'm limited by the states that I'm licensed to practice in. So what I do to these people is I would, of course, listen to them, find out exactly what their needs are, what I can do for them, and coach them. And the most important thing that I've coached people on is getting a hold of your medical records. If you were involuntarily admitted, or if they're labeling you with a psychiatric disorder that you don't have, get your medical records. And I've coached people into how to read their medical records and to look up every word you don't understand. And I have taken on some people to review their medical records with them. But it's very, very time consuming to do that.
Yes, it is. Linda, have you had an occasion to speak with or contact in any way Dr. Michael Hoffer, or have you referred anyone to him, as he is an authority on Havana syndrome and has diagnosed the diplomats and was the first and foremost contact that the diplomats had with the medical community?
And, that's really interesting to hear, because I was not referred, and I was a senior executive in the federal government when I completed that Havana syndrome form that was sent to the FBI office in the town that I was living in. And of course, I never got any follow-up on it. So no, I haven't. What I have done is I have referred people to Dr. Len Burr. And I'm not sure, I know he's very busy as well, but he was actually diagnosed with Havana syndrome. I imagine he probably would be referring more people on. But when people have questions on it, that's more who I would refer them to.
I see. It is not something that has been made public in terms of who the physician was that did diagnose him. That has been a mystery, or at least it has to me anyway. But
well, he's probably protecting that provider, because let's face it, I'm proof. It doesn't matter. They're going to come after you if they want you. It doesn't matter who you are. And but he does have a disability rating, and he is on disability.
I see. Okay, I have another question for you here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, many of us view James Giordano as only associated with Georgetown University. And believe me, that's as far as I got with him, Georgetown University. Then I started doing some research. Now, he is chair of the neuroethics program of one of the largest organizations of its kind in the world, and that's the Institute of Electronic Engineers, or IEEE, which all of us have seen. Now, the IEEE is, like I say, the largest organization of its kind, and it was established in 1961 from the ashes of the American Institute of Radio Engineers. Can you imagine, just for 1 minute, the amount of information that they have archived over the years? And what are the odds that Mr. Giordano knows a hell of a lot more than he is letting on? Now, everybody knows that people come under gag orders.
Mm-hmm.
But this company here, it includes members from more than 190 countries, 460,000 members, 60% of which are not from the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So, once again, do you think he knows a little more?
So professionally, I would have to say I really don't know. Personally, how could he not? So I went to Google and I just said James Giordano neuroweapons, and there's a ton of different videos that came up. Interesting. James Giordano, bold new neuroscience, YouTube from the Kennedy Institute of Ethics. Let's see. That was June 8, 2021, October 29, 2018. Modern War Institute, James Giordano, the brain is a battlefield of the future. He knows more than that. He knows a lot.
I think so. I think most definitely.
Yeah.
And we've got
Personal belief.
professor of neurology and biochemistry, now that's at Georgetown University,
Mm-hmm.
of the Neuroethics Studies Program at the Pellegrino Center for Clinical Bioethics, senior bioethicist of the Defense Medical Ethics Center, and chair of the Neuroethics Program of IEEE, as I mentioned, their brain initiative, and distinguished visiting professor of brain science, health promotions, and ethics at Coburg University of Applied Sciences in Germany. So yes, I say that he does know a lot more than he's letting on.
And Frank, for the audience, so I mean, somebody who's involved in ethics, or in particular bioethics, it's really an oxymoron for them to know and not do something about it, right? Ethics is the protection of human rights and the safety for research, right?
Exactly.
It is not to not disclose information that you know that is harmful to innocent victims.
This is correct. Now, I would like to relate this to the current administration.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it's called a witch hunt by the Democrats, but they're coming up with billions, 50 billion here, 20 billion there, of guided or misallocated funds.
Yep.
And it's more along the lines. You can actually compare them because if somebody put him in a courtroom and he had to answer all of these questions, he would have millions of lives on his hands.
Yep.
But he's supposed to be on our side. I have not seen it. I have seen all I have seen are videos that are giving him an attaboy. You know what I mean? But that's all I'm going to do in terms of that.
Well, so all this money that's unaccounted for, and the targeted program is one program that it's going to be hard to really find all the money because it's in a black budget, so it's hidden, so that they can get away with doing things without being monitored or reviewed. So
Right.
that's probably where some of this money is going, is funding some of the stuff that's happening.
Just last evening on our conference call, I brought up a person who that just blew right out of my head. But I'll have to do some editing, put it that way. Lost that one altogether. But I'm going to say it's probably time for me to thank you. Oh, we've got Betty Hayter. She's a very nice individual. Go ahead, Betty.
Oh, I just tuned in. I want to listen a little until I ask a question. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. You just got the wrong phone number in terms
Oh, I do? I do.
Yeah. You've got to read your newsletter if that's where you get information. It's
Well, I did on some tiny numbers that,
yeah,
that I thought it was the other number.
that's quite all
I'm going to
right.
call it.
Okay, the other number is 518-801.
Okay, hold on. I'm in a car. I'm looking for a pen.
Okay.
Is it one of your former numbers?
It's
Is that the listen number?
Yes, 518-801-1318.
518-801.
1318.
1318. Thanks so much, Frank.
Oh, no problem. And a lot of people get confused. When we are live, that's our live number. When we are off air, people can listen to episodes 24 hours a day.
Are you still live on the program for Friday?
Well, they're live programs that have been added to that particular site.
But yeah, you're live right now.
We're live right now, right?
Okay, great. Okay, let me recall. And thank you.
All right. Bye now.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. That's happening a lot. All you have to do basically is just read the newsletter, and the 617 number is specifically for you to call in and ask questions. And the other number is our listener line. You can't have a radio station without a listener line.
Right. I'm surprised we don't have more questions tonight.
Okay, we've got another caller. Go ahead, caller.
AI is taking notes.
Go ahead, caller. Hello, caller. Speak up. Don't be afraid.
Okay, thank you, Linda, for your presentation. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My question is about not being able to tell anybody about this, about the reaction that I get Not a single person is receptive to me telling them about this. And in fact, I get the opposite.
That's very distressing. And I'm glad that you have that realization. You have safety here. So with the targeted community, it's safe to talk about it, but I don't recommend you go and tell your doctors or the police. If you're going to do that, you better have a whole lot of very, very strong evidence, but they'll shut it down. It'll get shut down. In other words, they'll target.
Why that happens? Why? I mean, it seems strange to me if something that, years ago in my past, if something bad happened to someone, or let's say, I remember a story on 60 Minutes about 20 years ago where a girl was being watched in the bathroom at the place she worked or something, and they did a whole big story on it. People cared about that.
Mhm.
And this is so much bigger than that, the privacy thing.
It is, and people go along with it. And as I discussed earlier, some of it's because they're being compensated, or they're getting secondary gain either by, that God complex, it's feeding that narcissism, or out of fear and intimidation. Some of them, I believe, are brainwashed.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. I mean, something that I really believe is some of these people with these mass shootings or that will go and do these crazy crimes. I almost wonder if they're being targeted, and that's what they were doing, that brain modulation. And that's one of the things that they use them for. And why would they do that? Because they want to instill fear in the American people. Because what happens when you have fear? You have people who are gonna, it's easier to control them.
Okay, we have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we have another caller, Linda. Go ahead,
Mhm.
caller. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Sure, go right ahead.
Hi, Linda.
Hi.
So, and thank you for your information tonight. So, what are we going to do to get this to stop? Do you see hope here with the new administration and the we just had Patel that was sworn in today. He was confirmed yesterday, sworn in today, and there's other good confirmations that have happened over the last couple of weeks. So are you seeing this ending, or I am, and I'm just wondering what you're thinking about
Well, Frank
that.
and I had this conversation not that long ago, didn't we, Frank? So
Yeah.
if you remember Dr. Robert Duncan, he predicted it would stop in 2025. And I don't know why he predicted that, Frank. Do you know?
He saw things coming forward.
Okay.
And he,
There was
as a matter of fact, he claimed it on our show. And he saw things coming forward that perhaps no one else did. But I've always said that it's technology that will get us out of this. Because back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, we didn't have the internet that we do today. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have any social media. We didn't have anything. We had a pen and a piece of paper, an envelope, and a stamp.
And the typewriter.
Yeah.
Well, so I do think, I do have hope that it's not going to continue much longer for a combination of things. I really appreciate that Trump is looking at everything, and he is finding a lot of waste in the federal government. And he's targeting certain groups, and the FBI is one of them. And the FBI is big into they're doing this. And so the other thing that I know in my heart and in my head is that, this is a good versus evil. And no matter what your beliefs are, everybody understands that good versus evil, and good wins in the end. And I just see that the good is, as much as the world's got some crazy stuff going on, I'm actually seeing more hope and more good also.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And I'm a Catholic, and
Hmm.
so what has sustained me through this is prayer,
Yeah.
getting closer to God, and the idea of good versus evil, and good wins in the end.
Yeah.
And now, of course, with this new administration and Kennedy in place here, and Patel in place here, and Gandhi in places. So it's really rather interesting. I was telling another friend today, I hate to use the word TI, but another friend who's being tortured with this electromagnetic weaponry system, that it almost feels like our shot is being set up here. So everything's kind of in place right now, and it's a matter for us to ensure that we're heard, and that
Oh, we lost you. But I agree. I do. I think that a lot of things are going to happen that's going to shut this down.
Pardon me?
I think a lot of different things is going to come from different angles that will shut this down. Between them cutting funding to these programs, and then somebody said to me, "Oh yeah, but then George Soros is just going to give money." Well, eventually, because his whole thing is divide and conquer, right? And but I don't know that he can fund this whole program. This program is huge. But also, people are fighting back. And I hope every one of you who are listening are fighting back. You need to be a warrior. Don't be a victim. Be a warrior and fight back. And, thank you for mentioning that you are Catholic and you do prayers. My church, I'm Catholic too. And at every Mass, no matter what it's for, we pray the St. Michael the Archangel prayer. And the last words.
I know it well.
You know it. Okay. So they want to thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. Now, isn't it interesting that the Catholic Church is having us say that prayer?
Yeah. Yeah, we say it in my church as well. And I say it, many days. I say that
Yep.
particular prayer. But I think, unless you're a person who is being hurt by this weaponry, you can't possibly know how bad this program is. So we really also need to educate. They're talking also about AI, implementing AI, and the government's talking about implementing AI, which is not surprising. And of course, it's already out there. So we really want them to understand that how it can be used for nefarious purposes, and what this is all been about for us, and how dangerous AI can be. And I think so for it to stop, that's wonderful, but really for them to understand, this can't be like the church committee again. What was that, 1975, when Frank Church, God rest his soul, he he was instrumental in getting MK Ultra, or so he thought, to end. and I guess there were nominal payouts, supposedly, and an apology, only for it to roll into this. And of course, technology has gotten more sophisticated, and this is now a system. There's other components here that that are being used here. So we need to, not for this to roll in, for there to be an apology and payouts or whatever. We need this to end. We really need to explain how bad this is for this to end, because if we don't, this could be the end of civilization the way we know it. So we really, to your point, Linda, we really all want to do our part in ensuring that that the right conversations are had, so that this can't continue now or sometime in the future. So we do this not only for ourselves, but we do this for future generations, getting this to stop.
Right. And also for those who really don't have the ability right now because of the targeting. Some people are really in a bad way because of it.
Yes, that's true. That's a good point, Linda. Yes, it's true. And I get hurt more.
Mm-hmm.
But we all have different situations. So, and I wouldn't, certainly suggest anybody, take a chance with their life or something like that as a way of reporting it. We all do what we can do. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I see movement, I see good movement, and I see this as an opportunity, and I'm certainly doing everything I can. But this is going to stop. This has to stop. No one should ever be hurt like this, ever. Mm-hmm. And this has to. This is torture. We're being tortured by our own, our own
government.
And Linda, I don't know if you've mentioned this, but why do we think people my family members have been killed over this? Mm-hmm. So I mean, why such brutality where it goes to that degree? And I guess, do they get paid? Do we think they get paid for bonus money for killings, or I don't know if you have the answers to these questions, but these are some of the things that roam around in my head, wondering, why was my father, killed, and some of my aunts and uncles and my sister-in-law. I mean, why to that degree?
Yeah, it makes no sense. I do think some of them are incentivized, but keep in mind, this is evil. This is that evil. And so when you're looking at some of these personalities, or maybe brainwashed or mind control, that will have the person do some of these things, they may not even be aware that they're doing it. That's a hard concept for me, and I am not giving them a cop out. I pray for their souls, because I know that they're not going to go where we're going, at least not initially.
Yeah, well, I pray for them too, and I ask God to shine His light in their hearts and in their minds, and that everybody go to the side of good. And that's the best prayer I can say for them. Yeah. But yeah, so, and I heard you say earlier, and I agree that this has become almost habitual for them. Mm-hmm. Doing this day in and day out, week after week, year after year, decade after decade. For some of them, this is nothing for them to shoot some radio frequency at somebody and watch them suffer. So they're almost immune to watching people suffer. That doesn't excuse them at all, because they know better. We all know right from wrong, and they see that we're innocent people, and they see that we're being tortured. They see we're losing our homes and our jobs and our friends and our, etc. So they do know right from wrong. But there is, I agree with you. There is that component, probably of repetition, of them being in a state of the habit of this, an addiction. an addiction.
Yes. So,
And
so what happens? What happens is if you,
change too, you can
Mhm.
imagine if they're doing this day in and day out, they
Mhm.
start off with one kind of mindset, and their psyche must change doing this so often.
it does.
The down.
It does. If you know, so I also work with addiction, and that's that pathway where you get a high on, like some people, their addiction is food, some it's sex, some it's drugs, whatever. So on this here, when I talked about some of these personalities, narcissism, sociopaths, so they're getting pleasure out of what they're doing. They're getting pleasure out of the fact that they're controlling your bodily functions for some people, right? So it excites that limbic pathway in the brain, and so that pathway craves more and more and more. Um, so there is some chemical part, but I mean, again, they know right from wrong. And, it's also that God complex, and they think that they can do this because they're above the law. No one's going to do anything about it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for calling in, and we'll hear from you again. Good night. Okay, Linda, I think it's getting to be that time of night. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us this evening and giving such a fabulous presentation. And I'd like to thank my listeners, supporters, and I'd like to say God bless you all. My name is Frank.